Hi, I'm Mark. Welcome back to Photo Paint Fabrication. Well, we're back on Project Ruby today, and we're finally to the point that I get to spray some epoxy. But before we can do that, we have to finish the metal prep. So we have the trunk lid to finish. We've got the filler panel brace on Ruby herself to finish. I've already got a few parts I've already done off camera, 8-pillar cover, glove box cover. I've already even done the filler panel itself. We're only going to be spraying the underside of that though. But before we even get to any prep work, I want to bring you in close and talk to you a little bit about metal prep before you spray your DTM or your epoxy or whatever you're spraying to make sure you have the best surface possible to receive what you're spraying. So let's jump in close here and we'll talk about it. Okay guys, my GTO was dipped. So I took her to Oregon and she went to alkaline solution, and then when all the paint, the goo and everything was stripped off, she went into phosphoric acid to get all the rust off of her, and then that etched the steel. Now if you've stripped your car mechanically or chemically and the metal hasn't been etched, then you may want to consider thinking about using an etch wipe on it. Now, I'm not saying you have to do it, but you should look into it and possibly do some research. This is basically, I think, just phosphoric acid on a wipe, okay? And it says right on the package here, for use on metal surfaces, prevents corrosion, promotes adhesion, substitutes the use of wash primers and etch primers. So it's something to think about if you've got some bare steel that you just basically, didn't take it somewhere and have it dipped. So Ruby was dipped, so I don't have to worry about that. She's already been through a phosphoric acid bath. Now, what am I going to use to basically condition her steel and prep her for epoxy? Now, I will be spraying a true epoxy on her exterior. I picked up a lower quality DTM to spray on the inside where it's not as important and obviously way less expensive. But what I'm going to do is sand her with 220 grit DAs, okay? DA discs. Now you'll see a lot of guys on YouTube, and maybe you've seen somebody do it. They go after the car with 80 grit on a DA. Now I'm not sure why they think they need to go so rough. Maybe the metal is really damaged. But in my opinion, my thoughts on this is, why do you want to make a super deep scratch that maybe the epoxy or DTM can't get to the bottom of? It may not wet all the way down to the bottom of that scratch. And really, I don't think you're conditioning the steel at 80 grit. You're really scuffing it up. And you could think, well, Mark, that's going to let it bind into all those scratches. Well, if you think about it, factory cars are not scuffed before they go into the dip. I mean, they don't use 80 grit on them. They're stamped steel and basically dipped. And when you buy a repop, if you sand the electroplated primer that's on there off, you'll see, or if you strip that off, it's bare steel. It's not sanded. So, they electroplate that stuff on there. Now, my theory is I want to condition Ruby steel, prep it for the epoxy, and make it the best possible, seal or connection bond that I can. And I don't think 80 grit is what I want to do. I'm going to use 220 grit. I'm going to use some scotchbrite. Well, these aren't scotchbrite, they're Duragold, but this happens to be about 150 grit. This is a coarse. Now you're used to 3M scotchbrite pads like the purple. It's finer than this. So I wanted to get something a little more coarse. So because I'm going to be using these down in the nooks and crannies and all the hard to reach spots, so I may not be able to get in there that well. So I wanted something a little bit coarser to do the job and clean it up really nicely. Now, I went ahead and bought a whole box of these, and if you guys watch the channel, I like to cut them, whether I'm using scotchbrite pads or these, I like to cut them in smaller pieces, because most of the time, you're just using the edges and the corners and everything. So you cut them a little smaller, it gives you that many more corners and edges to use. So I'm always going to cut these down and use them, and I just use them up, chuck them, grab another one, right? And the other thing I'm going to be using is wire wheel. Now, there are areas of Ruby that still have some, I don't know what to call it. It's like this chalky, junky stuff that the phosphoric acid left behind. And so I want to wire wheel all that stuff off, right? and this is perfect to get down into hard to reach spots and stuff like that. I will be using it on one of my small grinders, and these wire wheels are rated for high-speed grinders. So this one says max RPM 8,500, okay? Now, if you just grab any old wire wheel and you throw it on one of your little, 8,000 RPM grinders, it's going to fly apart on you really, really fast, and it's going to be really dangerous. So make sure you look for the ones that are rated for the speed of the grinder or the sander you're going to be using, just to play it safe. You don't want to get injured. These wires will fly off here at high speed and poke you right in the eye or the face. So be careful. So the idea is to get a surface. Let me grab something here. Here's an A-pillar. Now see that surface? That is 220 grit. And I think that's the perfect surface, for the epoxy. And so I've sanded it inside and out. I've used scotchbrite on it everywhere. I'll go ahead, and these have been blown off, and they were cleaned with a wax and grease remover before I started, and I will use a wax and grease remover before I apply the epoxy, just to make sure there's no oils for my fingers or anything like that. So that's the plan. Now let's move over to the trunk lid and start prepping that for some epoxy. Okay, here's the underside of Ruby's trunk lid, and you all know we already took care of the inside by pouring some primer surface in there and sloshing it around, so now we got to take care of the outside. So the stuff I was talking about, you see the kind of the blackness here? Now, I don't even feel that, but I can see it, and that's, I don't know if it's just discoloring from the phosphoric acid or what, but this groove down in here, you see that? Now that's where we're going to be running the wire wheel to get all that. Now I'm still going to try to sand it and scuff it and everything else, but at least we know that it was hit with something, so that wire wheel will get down in there. And if we happen to get in there and sand and we don't hit every little spot, we know that it was conditioned with that wire wheel. So, but we have other spots that are a little more rough. They got a little texture to them. You see down inside there. Now I can get a wire wheel in there, but I can't really sand in there that well. So we're just going to wire wheel all these spots, all the little hard to reach spots, and if we go over them with sandpaper again later, great. But we know at least they've got some sort of treatment. But the first thing we want to do is take care of all the sharp edges and all the other stuff that's not really smooth. And if you see right here, there's a spot weld, and there's spot welds right here where they spot welded the plate for the bolts, the nuts actually for Ruby's trunk hinge. But if you see right here, I don't know if you guys can tell, it's mushroomed out of that, right? When that thing hit, it just kind of liquefied the metal and it squirted out right there. And that's actually sharp to the touch. I could cut my finger on it if I wasn't careful. So we're going to take 60 grit on a Rolock, I think. Maybe 80 grit, yeah, we'll use 80 grit, and we're going to grind anything that's not smooth to the touch down and make it nice and smooth. Then we're going to switch over to the wire wheel, and then we'll get the DA after it and some scotchbrite pads. So let me put the camera down, and we'll grab a Rolock disc. All right, let's get these cleaned up real quick. Much better, much better. All right, I'm going to go around and get the other side, and then there's a few other spots I want to hit with the Rolock, and then we're going to switch over to the wire wheel and see if we can get some of this other stuff out of here. Okay, let's do a little wire wheeling right here to kind of, I'll show you how effective it is. Okay, as you can see, it removed most of that stuff. We still got a little bit of here and there, like little, I don't even know what that is. But I'm going to keep at it and try to just keep hitting it. I may need to switch to a smaller wire wheel. The smaller ones seem to get into those nooks and crannies a little bit better. But it gets all the pitted areas really well. As you can see right there, there's a little pitted area. So it's nice to get those wire wheels and get the wires down inside there and really get that cleaned up. It's really done right. So I'm going to go ahead and hit some more, and then we're going to switch over to DA and start DAing this thing. Okay, the wire wheel did its job. Cleaned up really nice down inside here. So there's some pitted areas. I'm not too concerned about them. I mean, they're structurally sound, but they are pitted. The epoxy will fill all those pits, and we'll sand it and then smooth it all out. So it's not the end of the world. We're going to go ahead and switch over to a DA and DA what we can, and then what we can't, then we're going to just have to do it by hand. So let me grab the DA and get after it. Okay, I did everything I could with the DA. Now it's on to hand sanding. So it's looking pretty good. And to hand sand, when the DA disc wears out, then I just, fold it, peel it off, fold it in half and use it some more so I can get down into all these nooks and crannies, because really the DA you use in the outer inch and the center really doesn't get used, so unless you're on a really flat area. So it's actually looking really good. I just have to sand these areas over here and down inside here, finish that off, and then we have to go after it with the scotchbrite pad, the coarse Duragold pad. So let me finish sanding all this up, and then we'll blow it off, and then I think I've got an idea to make using that pad a little easier. Okay, got everything sanded, except I see a spot right here I missed. That's just wire wheel, so I need to get in there and sand that. My idea is, this is a setup I use to clean the shower, tile, and stuff like that. It's like a scotchbrite pad with Velcro attached to one side and a Velcro thing that goes on your drill or whatever. And it comes in different, this is more coarse, this one's a little finer, pretty much just like the 3M setup. But I don't have Velcro on this, but I thought, well, maybe it'll stick because the hook is on this side. So if I stick it on there, it stays pretty good. Not great, but it stays. So I think, if I'm pushing down, getting in all around all these round areas and everything, I think it'll work. And when it wears out, I'll flip it over, stick that side on it, and finish up. Let me test this out. We'll see how it goes. Okay, let's give it a try. Seems like it's working pretty good. Wow. Should have done this first, I think. All right, let me zoom you in close over here and so you guys can see it in action. Seems like it's going to work pretty good. That works pretty good, guys. It gets down inside all those spots I couldn't get with the wire wheelless sander. I just think I found myself a big time saver, labor saver, that's for sure, because I'm getting tired of sanding, I'll tell you that much. That looks really good. Okay guys, I'm just going to go over this whole thing. This looks like it's going to work out really well, and obviously this side is a lot harder than the other side. The other side, 99% of it, the DA will do it fine because it's smooth and flat, right? And we can get to everything. These undulations and all these pressed in shapes in here just make it, really tough. But it's important to me to do this side just as good as the other side, really, because if I'm going this far, I'm going to spend the extra half hour or whatever it takes to make sure this is done properly. So I'm going to get after it. I'll bring you back. We'll take a quick look at it, flip this thing over, and probably bust out the other side in 5 minutes. So we're going to get after it. Okay, it looks pretty shiny. Looks pretty clean. So I'm pretty happy with the way everything came out. No really big problems to run into. Just, your thumbs down on all these little spot welds and stuff like that. But yeah, this was the hard part. Let's flip it over and do the easy part. All right, let's go ahead and clean the panel. I haven't cleaned this side yet, so I know this isn't a Lysol 3-in-1 cleaner. I'm just using the bottle. These bottles seem to hold up pretty well. The store-bought bottles, the empty ones I buy, seem to not squirt after a while. So I have some wax and grease remover in here. And instead of using a rag soaked in it and wiping it and then letting it soak and then wiping it with a clean rag, I just use a spray bottle. So we're just going to mist this. And then just let it soak for a moment. Now, I don't have to be very careful with this, because obviously Ruby was dipped, right? But if you're doing a car that's been out and had waxes and bird poop and all kinds of road tar on it, then you may want to double clean it. So it's just laying on here, and it's fairly cool in the shop, so it's not evaporating very fast. So then we're just going to go ahead and wipe it down. And some of you may be thinking, well, Mark, I'm going to sand the surface. Why do I need to clean it so well? Well, the last thing you want to do is, for one thing, look at that. For one thing, contaminants don't sand off. You just smush them around, all right? You're just going to push them around. Another thing is, the worst part about it is, you start sanding it, you could push those contaminants down into your sand scratches. So you're actually embedding them into your layer, whatever it's paint, primer, or bare steel. So you want to make sure that you clean the area first very carefully. And you can do that with, if it's a painted car, use really strong detergent and hot water. And you guys seen me do that on the channel before. And then go ahead and just clean it that way. And just do that 2 or 3 times to make sure you get everything off. So, all right, well, we're pretty clean. The rag's coming up pretty clean. Turn your rag often. You saw the junk that came off there, and that's just right from the strippers and traveling home and sitting around in the shop. So now we're ready to get after it with a DA. Okay, I'm not going to show you me DAing this because it's pretty straightforward. You guys know how to run a DA. But I'll show you the surface right now just before we start. And you can see some kind of scratches in here. I can't feel them, but I can see them. Those are probably from coming in and out of the tank, being handled at the paint strippers. But it all looks pretty good. I don't feel any dents on this thing. The DA will probably show them if there's any little undulation. So let me grab the DA, I'll time it, see how long it takes, but we should be able to bust this out pretty quick. Okay, that took right at 15 minutes, and went over it twice with the DA. About a third of the way through, I switched to a fresh DA disc and went over it once and then went over it again. And then I flipped that pad over that was on the drill, and that gold scotchbrite pad, and went over the whole thing carefully. So any spot I saw that I might have missed, I just kind of hit it really good with that scotchbrite pad. And these black streaks that were kind of along here, I think that was rust that was underneath the paint, and then when it was stripped off and went in the phosphoric acid, it kind of left that black residue behind. I'm not entirely sure, but I paid close attention to those, went over them a few times. I can kind of feel them, but I can't, so it's kind of strange. But this panel is ready to go. I mean, we could hang it up, clean it, and spray it with epoxy right now. But I still have the windshield wiper cowl to prep both sides, and that's going to take a little while with all those little, slots in there. And then I have the filler panel brace on Ruby herself, and I'll probably just use a wire brush with the, the sander, and just go over that whole area, and then do a little bit of DAing around it on it. So I'm going to go ahead and take care of all that off camera, and then hopefully we can clean out the shop here and spray some epoxy. Okay guys, it is the next day. I ran out of time yesterday, and there was just so much to do, and the shop needed to be cleaned up a little bit. So I spent my time cleaning everything up and getting some of the parts hung. So we are just about ready to mix up some of this epoxy. So I have all the parts on my rack here, all the small parts. Got them hung. Got the trunk lid. It's been cleaned, tacked off. It's ready to go. It's looking really good. We are going to be painting the underside of the filler panel and the sides here. So when it pushes down inside there, that's got epoxy. Then we'll worry about removing a little bit of that when we go to spot weld it or weld it in. So that's going to get at least one good coat. Then we have the windshield wiper cowl here. And my plan is probably 2 coats on all exterior pieces and just 1 coat on the underside. We'll see. See how it covers, see how it lays down. And if we have extra, I'm going to be mixing up only a half a quart at a time. I haven't sprayed this material before, so I'm going to take it slow. I don't want to throw a bunch away. This stuff's not cheap. Plus, it's just wasteful. So, and then we're going to spray the filler panel brace. We're going to get all this. We don't have to get up on the package tray too much. We're going to get out here. Once we get the filler panel in, that's going to get sprayed later. And then we are also going to spray right inside. Let me see if I can get an angle on this. right in here. So I've got all this prepped right here, the sail panel's prepped. We're gonna spray this because once we put the filler panel on that, we'll never be able to get to it again. So we're gonna get some spray up on here. That's why I prepped that really well. And then we're gonna get all down inside here and everything. And that'll probably get one good coat, maybe two. We'll see how much material we have for extra protection. But I think we're just about ready to start mixing this stuff up. Okay guys, we're getting this stuff mixed up and it is thick. That is pretty thick stuff. They said it covers really well and builds really well, so obviously, look at that. Barely lays over. So the mixture on this is 5 parts epoxy, 2 parts reducer, 1 part activator or hardener. And unfortunately, my cups do not have a 5-2-1 on it. It has a 5-1-1, but not a 5-2-1. So I switched over to milliliters, and since I'm mixing a small quantity, I could use this cup, but I just switched over to my throwaways that I get super cheap from Smart Final. And so we're going to be mixing up a 5-2-1 mix on here. So if you did milliliters, you could do 500 milliliters, and then 200 milliliters of solvent, and then 100 milliliters of hardener, right? So basically that's what I did. I transferred it over here, but only half of that. So 250, 100, and then 50, right? So that's 5-2-1. So we're gonna go ahead and get this in there. Man, pouring this off right off the bat is always tough. So I'm gonna get some paper towels out like I usually do, and we're gonna go ahead and get this mixed up. It's so thick, I'm tempted just to grab a small cup and pour it in there, but let me see what I can do. Okay, I cheated, and I used a little cup to dip it into there. So, don't really want to spill this. Right on the money. That's it right there. Okay, now mixing this stuff, you think about it just like real epoxy. You want to make sure all the activator, the hardener is mixed in, okay? Now you see the dribbles I've got on the side here. I'm going to scrape all that. I'm going to make sure everything's mixed up really well. This stuff is super thick, so it's going to take a while to get the reducer incorporated down into the epoxy itself. So I'll spend quite a bit of time, maybe 10 minutes stirring this up. And then we'll go ahead and get it in the gun. Okay guys, I got about half a pot here. The gun is brand new if you've been watching along, and you never want to use a gun right out of the box, especially cheap guns. You got the Harbor Freight guns, they're full of goo inside. So you always want to take them apart, clean them thoroughly. I've already had this one apart, and I just ran some acetone through it just to make sure it was good and clean. So it's ready to go. So let me back the camera away. I haven't sprayed in a while in here, so I got to remember how I do it, protect the camera. And we'll get the fan on, and we'll probably adjust the gun right on the underside of the trunk lid so we don't waste any material. So we'll just adjust the gun over there. So let's get set up, get some spraying done. Laying down pretty dry. A little better. That looks pretty good. Go ahead and get some on here. That is not wetting out very well. I don't like it. I don't like it at all. The rep told me I could add more solvent to make it smooth out a little bit, use it more like a sealer. I'm going to add some more solvent to it and wet it out a little more. Much better. Yeah, that's way better. Way better. All right, let's get this thing covered. Yeah, that looks a lot better. Sometimes when you're trying something new, you just gotta have to
fiddle with it a little to get it to work the way you want, but I think my air pressure was too low and the material was just a little thick, so that's looking really good. I'm going to get the other side, move the camera back, and we'll bust all this out. Get the back side here first. All right, let's get this bad boy. All right, I got a little hook here so I can hang on to these so they don't move around too much. Yep. I have to mix up some more. Move over to Ruby and spray that brace. Okay, that's pretty good right there. A little heavier right where the pits are.
Okay, while we're waiting for it to flash off, it wants you to let it flash off till it's dull before you apply a second coat. So we'll take a close look. It really laid down a lot better once I started figuring it out. So I seriously, I probably could have done it without adding more reducer, with just adding more air pressure to atomize that really thick material. I don't know if I could spray this out of a 1.3 millimeter and do a good job. So, I mean, it'll spray, but I doubt it'll do as good a job as it should. And it did lay down, it all melded together. Let's get the light on. You can see it in the light right here. Hopefully that's focusing. But it's laying down really tight and nice, which is what you want. You don't want, you know, piling on a bunch of orange peel that you got to sand off, right? No, we don't have to worry about pot life. This stuff has a 1 hour pot life at 90 degrees, and we're 60 degrees, so we got plenty of time. But this looks coated really well. You can see it in the light. But I definitely think I was moving way too fast at the beginning, not enough air pressure, and just didn't let it do its job. So, hey, that's why you learn, and it's really good to learn on parts that aren't super important. Okay, it looks like we're ready for a second coat, so I'm just going to put the respirator on and go for it. Okay, all done. Gun's clean, hair's clear, and the finish is actually looking really nice once I figured it out. So I ended up about 12 PSI on the gun. It was calling 69 PSI. I didn't like the way it was laying down, kicked it up a little bit, and I'll tell you, I'd rather have a little more overspray, which I did, and have a little less sanding. So it came out really nice. Let's look at the back side here. Let's see if I can get a close up. That looks like it's focusing. We've got some light orange peeling, but not bad at all for the build. I think it looks great. Really happy. Get these protected. And I laid it down pretty good on these too, so we are looking good. 2 coats on all the exterior parts and 1 good coat on the parts that are going on the inside. So we are getting very close to be able to weld that sucker on Ruby and get that part out of the way. Okay guys, that pretty much wraps up this video on metal prep and getting some epoxy sprayed on some parts for Ruby. Got to try out the new gun. I like the way it worked. It was a little hard to figure out the gun and the new material at the same time, but we got it worked out and it looks great. So really happy to get these parts protected. Now I can set most of these just out of the way. The filler panel, it's going to stay in the shop because it's going to go on Ruby here really soon. Thanks for joining me here at Foothill Paint Fabrication. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button if you haven't already. Mash that bell and drop me a comment. I'd love to hear from you. We'll see you on the next one.